And we continue now with the first panel session of the day, a discussion between three amazing women about what it means to be a leader in e-commerce, drawing a combined experience of almost 5 decades. Hosting the panel is Talia Shani, Director of Marketing at Yotpo UK. She's an expert in user-generated content strategy with a speciality in emerging vertical e-commerce brands. Joining her today is Elena Ritchie, Head of Industry for Retail at Google. Her specialities include account management, project management, and product development. And finally, we have Polly Lygoe, Client Services Director here at JH. She's worked at agency side across strategy, management, and leadership roles, and she's driving continuous improvement and growth for our clients. Over to you, Talia.
Thanks so much, Joseph. Hi, everyone. We're so excited to have you here today for Amazing Women in E-commerce live at Meet Magento. We have a great panel. Before we hop in, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. Like Joseph said, I'm Talia. I'm a director of marketing at Yotpo. Yotpo is an e-commerce marketing solution for Magento, and we have solutions like ratings, reviews, visual marketing, loyalty, referrals, SMS, and more. That's the last you'll hear me talk about Yotpo today. Just to talk about the Amazing Women in E-commerce initiative, it's something we started in 2018 to recognize and highlight amazing women in the e-commerce space, alongside raising money for charity. So since we started this project, we've raised and donated over $40,000 to charities supporting girls and women in the US and the UK, which is something we are particularly proud of and love to bring up when we talk about amazing women in e-commerce. So on to the amazing women. We have Polly and Elena here with us today. Okay, so just as an icebreaker, I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself, your current role, say the last thing you bought online. I will say the last thing I bought online, which is not the last thing I wanted to buy online, to be perfectly honest. But I bought like a huge, they have on Amazon these huge things of hair accessories for kids, and I needed to, my 17-month-old's hair is getting wild, so I had to buy like a huge package of 400 hair clips and things. So sadly, not something for me. Elena, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and the last thing you bought online?
Yes, happy to. So hi, everybody. My name is Elena Ritchie. I'm the head of retail for Central Europe at Google. And I actually head up a team of very talented account executives and analytical consultants. And our focus is consulting large e-commerce retailers on all of marketing's, Google marketing solutions, but also how they can generally accelerate their digital transformation within retail and their companies in general. And that's a little bit about me and what I do. And I actually thought about it just now. So I have a very similar experience. For my nephew's birthday, I bought water balloons, and I bought a very nifty device that enables you to fill 50 water balloons in one go. And I thought that's a fantastic idea because you don't have to fiddle with them. But it had some repercussions because this way we had 50 readily available water balloons at one time. So it kind of backfired, but that was my actually last purchase.
That's awesome.
And nice to meet everybody.
Thanks so much, Elena. Polly, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Polly Lygoe. I have been working broadly in digital for about 20 years, predominantly in agencies and sort of consultancies that are looking to help brands kind of grow digital impact. So my roles fall across sort of strategy and also client services management. And I'd say sort of my overall interest and kind of the thread across my career is just that interest in all elements of customer experience. I love how that kind of relates into the really tangled journey you get across on and offline, and how we emotionally connect with brands, and how that kind of, and products, I suppose. So I lead the JH agency strategy and growth focused team. So it is about just driving that continuous improvement and growing our clients. And that's across a variety of sectors. So it's travel, it's beauty, it's food and drink, manufacturing, beyond. And we have a total theme here. None of us have bought anything for ourselves. Last thing I bought, and at first I was thinking this might be really embarrassing, but actually this is a top answer, I think. I have a little boy who's about to be 6, and we're having a robot themed birthday party. So I bought some very epic robot helium balloons, pre-inflated, from a website that I discovered over the pandemic. Thank you, Google. It's called Bubblegum Balloons, highly recommended. but they deliver these pre-inflated huge balloon arrangements and these massive, like 6-foot tall boxes to your house. So it's the perfect addition to any party, particularly, when we have all these like tiny 4 people at home birthday parties that we're trying to like jazz up. So that has been like my excitement over the last year and a bit.
I love that. That's awesome. Elena, let's go to you with the first question I really have today. How did you get into e-commerce? Sort of how did you start working with e-commerce, and how did you get into your current role?
Thank you for asking that. So I actually didn't start my career in e-commerce. So I pivoted towards it later on in my career. So I actually used to work for a chemical manufacturer for many years, a global chemical manufacturer, very large. I used to sell chlorinated solvents, a very different world. And actually, I came into Google by a talk, and I was so fascinated that I asked them if they would hire me, and they did. So I was very happy about that. And at Google, I started in 2014, and I've really changed my career from account management to now heading up a team of the said very talented account executives and analytical consultants, and have had different roles at Google. And I'm really happy from moving to Dublin, back to Berlin, and just progressing my career there. And yes, maybe what is also quite interesting is that on top of my core role, I was also leading an internal community and employee research group called Women at Google. And I led that team for the Google Berlin site for over 4 years, and only ended up giving that role to somebody else in January this year. So very passionate about my core role and that as well.
I love that. When we did the pre-interview and Elena told us that, my face like fully lit up. This time I tried to keep it cool. But I would love to hear more about sort of what it meant to lead that sort of group, what your experiences were like. Anything you would like to share about that would be amazing.
So maybe, general, it's quite interesting that Google has many employee research groups, and that there are very, very openly shared guidelines how to join a research group, how to found one, and it's very enabling. And Women at Google is a group that aims to empower women at Google and beyond, and the workforce and beyond. And we're actually the largest ERG at Google, where I think somewhere between 7,000 and 9,000 participants now at Google. Google has over 100,000 employees, so there's still a large percentile of the overall workforce joins this team. And it's really about creating awareness for opportunities that we see in that era, creating trainings or creating a mentorship or coaching opportunities, and just generally coming together in that space and creating a very psychologically safe environment to progress maybe areas that we should work on as a company, but also as individuals. So I loved that team, and I'm still very strongly partake in all the activities we do. And it starts from supporting very young women. So we have children for the Girls' Day. It's a German initiative where we teach girls between 10 and 15 coding, so block coding. This is how I learned coding myself, if I'm honest. And where we start that young, but we also have a lot of mentorship programs with women just after university, and then also with women who want to progress their career from individual contributor to management and then beyond. So we're trying to tackle all those aspects. And as you can see, I could talk on forever, but I will stop myself. And that's maybe just a good introduction there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Polly, how about you? How did you get started in e-commerce, and how did you get into your current role?
Well, before I go into that, I will say I got chills as you were chatting there, Elena. And I think, well, we do have a small women's community at JH. We are a much smaller organization. So far, we've only been focused on reading female-led literature, but you've absolutely inspired us a bit more. So thank you for those notes. About kind of my background, I guess. So my early roles were focused a lot on like web builds for big public sector organizations and major sort of national and global charities. So my first e-commerce website was actually one for a big UK charity who are trying to sort of productize their donations and broaden their typical donor base. So I've never really been purist e-commerce, but throughout my career, I think, I would say some of those e-commerce focused clients and projects are the ones, that are some of my favorites. And A few years back, I helped deliver a really amazing customer experience strategy for like a high-end department store. And again, it's that really fascinating kind of peeling back of the layers on, what does the customer need and the want, the behavior. And we have this amazing in-store experience, but how do you do that online? So I like that really messy mix of the kind of shopping in-store, online, and then the web and how that experience intertwines. It's just hugely kind of challenging and interesting for me. And I suppose that is sort of how I've grown my career is always seeking out those sorts of challenges and working in businesses, I guess, who like to try and bite that off and make like a very complex experience seem quite simple and seamless. And I think that's what the team at JH does really well. And that's kind of what keeps spurring me on into, I guess, seeking out ever more, ever better.
Also for the audience to know, when we had a pre-interview with Polly and she mentioned that she had worked at sort of the intersection of charity and e-commerce, that was another fangirl moment where my face lit up, something I think is so cool. Can you talk, Polly, a little bit about sort of what is like that, like charity, like e-commerce in the charity world? How is that different or similar to pure play e-commerce? Anything you could share about that experience would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think, in my experience at least, I've often found it's the charities and kind of the third sector who are sometimes a bit more willing to like take a chance and a little bit more open to risk in a way. They sometimes have smaller budgets, so they're kind of trying to maximize their impact and they're going to often go for it, I find, whereas maybe a bigger corporation is a little bit maybe stayed and less kind of open to taking that risk. So, the example I mentioned before, that's kind of going back to the early 2000s. And I think now so many more charities are really savvy to giving different types of supporters different ways to engage. And, I think they, in many ways, are trying to think more like the classic retailers. So, even if you're going to set up an online donation or you're selling products, you're obviously still going to have to be really hot on how that purchase journey flows and be really clear on what your conversion opportunities are. So, I love how folks like UNICEF, they are kind of blending their mission with that productization. It's so clever. Like, I don't know if you're familiar, but for like a donation each month, my son gets a postcard, and it's actually probably more than a postcard. It's a little pack of information cards and stickers, and it's from Paddington Bear. And he sends it from a different country every single month. And, at the same time, my son's learning about that country, the language, what its flag looks like, what sort of animals are you going to find there? And learning about a child there, what does that child enjoy doing? What do they play with? Or what do they do in school? There's stickers, they give you a little passport and you're putting them in, and, it's an educational opportunity, but it's so true to the UNICEF mission and to their brand. We're protecting children and it's spot on. It's all about kids. So I think, I love that sort of intersection. I think big brands now have to have pretty strong conscientiousness towards social responsibility and sustainability too. So I don't want to go so far as to say, the lines are getting really blurred, but I do think it's a lens that's impacting more and more of all of our shopping behaviors. Just the tiniest things like Marks and Spencer's loyalty. When I use my Sparks card, I can choose who M&S are donating to, and I can see those funds totting up over time. So I've got that feel-good factor, and I feel like, my buying whatever I'm buying in M&S is going to a better cause. It is intertwining a lot more, and just interesting to see, I think.
Yeah, I think I just think it's so cool to see those worlds come together. One of the things that I see that I love, exactly what you talk about, Polly, is people who offer, I can join a loyalty program and I can collect those loyalty points and then I can use that to donate to charity. I think it's like one of the coolest things that a business can do. And that's something I think it's been like relatively new-ish. I know M&S has been doing it for a while, love them. But I'm seeing that more and more. And I think it's amazing. Brooklinen is a brand that comes to mind that's doing something similar. So on that topic, we're kind of talking about new things in e-commerce. Elena, what about like trends in e-commerce? What do you think are going to be some trends? The next big thing in e-commerce? What's I don't know, catching your eye right now?
Oh, that's a very good question. Maybe let's look a bit about something that we at Google are really focusing on right now, and I'm really focusing around with our teams, which is actually consumer behavior and how we see trends that arise from that area. So I think that is something that we talk about we've always talked about a lot, but especially due to the pandemic, there have been so many changes, so much is happening that we really have to be very on top of the changes in the industry, and especially as Google, but also as marketeers, we have to be very agile to adapt to these unpredictable changes. And maybe as I'm Google, I'm going to share some data, of course. I think it is very interesting to see that even this year in comparison to last, we've had massive growth across the countries. For example, delivery of restaurants close by is still increasing massively. And that 10 times as much as even last year. And just as interesting, also what we're saying to the social factor of things, queries towards which I really found interesting to hear is supporting local business. These search terms have grown 20 times as much this year than last year. So you see there's a lot of consciousness to what's happening around you and to thinking of others and how to support them, which I think is super interesting, goes hand in hand what you said, Polly, is that there's a new dynamic to combine business with these values. And in that sense, maybe just the changes there are very strong. And what we see also, which I find interesting personally, is that working from home is becoming the new normal. We see it, or we're all probably working from home right now. And that even like all the searches around that topic have doubled even the last months only. So it's becoming increasingly important. If I'd have to narrow it down to a couple of trends, maybe the first one I would highlight would be everything that is the change of like online shopping generally, like we're talking about e-commerce here. So online shopping, one big trend that we see is that users they have increased expectations. They are more exploratory and they're less loyal, right? So I just read a recent study that shows that only in this last couple of months in 2021, users in Germany said that 30% of them had conducted their last shopping at a shop that they've never shopped before. So there's less loyalty. But then again, on the other side, we see that the new generation is really focusing on values, and we spoke about sustainability. And there's a study that shows that 55% of Gen Z consumers say that they are looking for brands and companies that reflect their values. And the big one is sustainability, of course. We see Adidas creating completely recyclable shoes, right? There's a lot going on in the market that I find super interesting. Maybe the third one, if I may, the last one, apart from like online shopping behavior and speaking about values, which affect spending behaviors, essentially. The third one, which I find is super interesting, is that through all the lockdowns, obviously, we saw increase in online shopping through all age groups, but there is a new age group which has arisen very strongly online throughout the countries, which is 55 plus. We sometimes call them the silver surfers, where we really see that there is an increase in purchasing behavior and in volume, but we also see that they're here to stay and that they will have a lasting impact. So maybe if I'd narrow it down to some very interesting trends that I look at right now, I would say maybe these three.
Really interesting. Polly, what about you? What do you think is the next big trend, the next big thing in e-commerce?
Well, I always get so fearful of these like forward projecting questions and what's the future and all that. But, I feel like for us, we are both kind of technology and customer focused business. So a lot of the trends we've been seeing, and I think, one that is going to continue to grow and grow, is just around brands trying to go headless or use PWA. So just essentially decoupling the back end from the front end. So we have a lot more flexibility on that kind of customer experience. So that's a huge one. It's only going to get bigger. But I, kind of going to that loyalty point, Elena, I think, many brands have had a bit of a boom over the last year and a bit. And so they do have these new customers that have kind of come out of nowhere, which is great. And they're having to work really hard to keep those customers. So, we are talking to a lot of our clients about loyalty programs and the referrals asks and trying to, create a community and maximize on that, using user-generated content and all of that. And I think the other side of that too is then also asking those customers, what do they want, and spending some time doing user testing, doing some research, doing some kind of test and learn work streams. So, not necessarily big trends, but I do think those are the kind of steps we're taking to hopefully latch on to some of the change that we've experienced.
Yeah, I think, Paula, you hit on something really interesting, which is that, and I'm just thinking about myself as a consumer, I'm loyal to a few brands, and then I do like specifically reserve part of my spending budget for new places that I want to try. And then the challenge is on them for like, how are they going to keep me coming back? How are they going to keep me from being a one-time purchaser, which I know is something that I hear a lot from e-commerce brands, is like they're trying to increase those number of purchases that come from a single customer, because that's kind of the ticket as far as accelerating growth. So that's super interesting. Elena, back to you. You've worked at Google for a while in the ad sector. I'm curious, kind of, how have you seen Google Ads evolve and change over time?
That's a great and a very big question, actually. So there's a lot of change. And obviously in the last 7 years, I wouldn't even know where to start, right? But there's a lot has changed to very as agilely as possible to adapt to changing consumer needs, but also, of course, for us to change to corresponding marketing needs, right? So it's a mix of both, where we obviously Google is always consumer first, but we really try to also offer solutions to react to changing consumer behaviors. And I think what has been key in the last years as the core of our role to consult our partners, our e-commerce partners on change, adapting to change, and providing solutions or offering discussions and brainstormings on these solutions. I think even in the last years, but especially in the last couple of months, it's been so challenging to adapt to the new normal. And at Google, we've really had tried to understand and using the data that we have to provide insights and tools and as trends as much as we can to marketers to really utilize Google Ads and all the solutions around that to adapt to the new normal. And if I think about that, something that you just said with changing consumer behavior and shopping behaviors, and we spoke about navigating all the complexities of the offerings. So I think there are two things that I find specifically interesting in this area. One is, we call it at Google a little bit the changeable consumerism, and it's basically the acceleration of everything, right? Like everything is accelerating so fast. So I think the pandemic has really showed us that we are not able to predict changes and in pattern changes very far in the future. So that is not what we can, but we can be agile and we can embrace these and understand these changes based on insights and data and then react very quickly. Hand in hand with that goes choice complexity, right? We just spoke about there's so many offerings. Being loyal is still there. Yes, I'm not saying that we're no longer loyal, right? But I think that there is so much more offering. There are so many more general choices and channels just to choose from. And I think it's a challenge for marketers to stay on top of that, and for brands in general to navigate all the choices that users have. And if I'd have to narrow it down, it's a little bit be fast and be helpful, right, for the brands. So make sure to utilize the insights, the tools, the data you have to be there when the user, which we've been saying for a long time, but now more than ever, to be fast and be there, and then to be helpful, right? I think that's going to be key. So for me, when looking at how Google Ads has changed and how the ecosystem has been changing, I think like changeable consumerism and also just the increased complexity of choices. I think those are two big trends and changes that we've seen over the years, and especially in the last months.
Amazing. Polly, I think this is going to be our last question for today, so we can allow for some time for audience questions. So you're working with tons of clients at JH across different industries. I'm curious, sort of, like if we take like two vastly different industries, beauty, or what I experience as vastly different industries like beauty and electronics, are there similarities between those industries that seem really different on their face? Or are they like, is the consumer behavior completely different? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, honestly, I think there are probably more similarities than there are differences across sectors. Typically, we're all trying to make sure we're ranking well across all the search engines, our site's loading cleanly and quickly, and that a complex product structure can be navigated really seamlessly. And, actually it's funny because I think electronics and beauty, they often have a lot of products and a lot of complexity to their products. So again, lots more similarities, I think, than might be immediately obvious. And things like, what's my checkout experience like? Whatever payment methods can I use? These are all things that all of our clients are thinking about. I remember when there used to be just like one payment option, and now if you don't have at least half a dozen, you are absolutely behind. So every organization that we're talking to, they want to be able to do all of this, do it ever better. And it's still all the kind of similar sorts of challenges around shipping and warehousing, and what's a global expansion going to look like, or a wider regional expansion. So there's obviously slight nuances to your customer base, but ultimately we're all becoming savvier shoppers. We just want a good customer experience. And Elena, you're talking about, I'm this older, the silver surfers. I mean, when is 50 going to be silver? Like, that's a bit,
I know.
Right? But, it's true, the people that we used to think are not digital natives, they're not going to be able to pick up on a great shopping experience. They're in there and they're spending. So yeah, I think it's so much more similar really than different.
Awesome. Okay, Joseph, do we have any audience questions for the panel?
So probably a big one coming from Daniela here is just thinking more broadly about your careers here. What's that something you wished you knew earlier? And I think let's frame it within particularly being a woman in e-commerce and having those climbing the ladder incredibly like the three of you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think I consider myself quite a generalist, and that used to really annoy me because I just saw all these people around me who were so clever at one thing or another, and that just wasn't my natural path. So I wish I knew earlier in my career to just own my own interest and expertise and who I really genuinely was, and to have that confidence because you do have something to offer, and it's easy to look and go, oh, I didn't get that job I wanted, or I didn't get this career opportunity, but I do strongly believe that what's meant for you will be yours, and so just kind of embracing that and knowing that you are right probably where you should be, and to trust your gut on that too.
Absolutely, yeah. Elena, do you have something to add on that?
I was going to give Talia. Do you want to go first? I've already been talking so much. So.
I wasn't prepared. I wasn't going to answer questions, but I'll do this one. I think, kind of building on what Polly said, I feel like I almost had an opposite experience where my background was in content, and that felt so much like that's what comes naturally to me. That's what I can do really well. And I was really specialized in that way. And I think I was lacking the confidence to become more of a generalist. Now I would say I'm definitely a generalist, and it served me really, really well. Having the content background also has served me really, really well. But I think to take that leap, breaking out of this really specific role into something more general was scary and something I didn't think I could do, to be honest. And then it's just like anything, you just do it, right? And then you figure it out. There was a learning curve, but that's always going to be the case. So, yeah.
Oh, I absolutely agree, actually. But sorry, Joseph.
I was saying, it's really interesting to hear that. But Elena, you offer your thoughts on that one.
Yes, I'm offering my personal opinion, of course, here, but I think it's really, I agree with what you both said. There's a lot of, we call it like the imposter syndrome, right? Where you're always thinking, oh, I'm not as good as maybe the next person because they built a well somewhere and I didn't, like there's a lot of that going on. But I think it's all about being confident in what you can do. And I don't know if this is very good advice, but I always like the saying, fake it till you make it. And then to be just confident in what you can do and just not think about all your weaknesses, because we have so many, think about your strengths. And apart from, and just, embracing it and being confident. And on top of that, something that I would have been nice maybe to know a little bit earlier is how important your network is. I think that is something I would like to give, especially younger professionals, is to not underestimate the power of the people around you and how much energy they can give you and how important it is to build a long-lasting network, because these people around you will be important to you in the future, because you will grow with them, or maybe they will become your mentors or advocates, or you will become theirs. And it's so important to be aware of that and to utilize it where it makes sense. So using your network and understanding the importance, I think, is really is key.
Yeah, Eleanor, I think that's a fantastic point for us to kind of then spin off a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's hard for people to have been getting together and doing that networking, and hopefully that's something we're going to be able to do a lot more of. Polly mentioned the book group at JH as kind of, I guess, a really easy way for somebody to be establishing that kind of support group. Talia, Eleanor, do you have some suggestions? You know, if there's women out there who listening who are thinking, oh, I quite fancy doing that, what else could I do?
Sure, I'll jump in just because something comes to mind really quickly, which is this project, Amazing Women in E-commerce. Like I mentioned, we've been doing it for a while. And the dream was sort of, could this become a networking thing? Can this be like something where women meet each other, learn from each other, become mentors, mentees, get their next jobs and stuff like that? And to that end, and to what you said about sort of virtual networking, probably my proudest moment with Amazing Women in E-commerce initiative is that we had a panel last year. There was 2 women on the panel, one working at an electronic music company, one who owns a beauty brand. And we were just on the panel together, and, you know, I share everyone's information after the panel and stuff like that. And about a year later, we reached back out to one of the women to ask them to be on another panel. And she said, oh yeah, that's fine. You just have to change my title because I just started working at this beauty company. And so they'd actually met virtually on the panel together and ended up reconnecting when one was looking for a job and one was looking to hire somebody. And for me, that's the coolest thing that I've ever been a part of. Like, I think that's great. And I hope more things like that happen. So yeah, I guess it also is a bit of like, you never know what is networking. Like, you wouldn't necessarily think being on a panel is you're going to find your next job, but you never know as long as you're open to it.
Opportunities where they do come up, right? And we'll probably a little bit of time, very, very quickly, Eleanor, for a final thought from yourself.
I agree with what Polly and Talia said. I think it's very important. If you wanted to connect with networks, you can Google the networks, right? Look for something local, maybe close to you, or a topic that is of interest to you, and just embrace that opportunity to meet with people. And I think that is, depending on how your personality is, it may be easy or hard for you. But if you have that inkling, it's always good to connect with people on that way, and it doesn't have to be physical. So I have a lot more thoughts on this, but I think that is a good wrap up here to just utilize these moments and use them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So yeah, all I've got to say then is thank you to Talia for hosting the panel, to Eleanor and Polly for your really, really useful insights there.